to our KPC Daily Devotional. Today I'd like to read from 1 Corinthians, the last few verses of chapter 10 and the first verse of chapter 11. The Apostle Paul writes, "So whether you eat or drink or whatever you do everything for the glory of God. Give no offense to Jews or to Greeks or to the church of God, just as I try to please everyone in everything I do, not seeking my own advantage, but that of many, so that they may be saved. Be imitators of me as I am of Christ." This week we've been hearing devotionals from my forthcoming collection, The Social World of Fleas. And today's is entitled Copy Dog. Copy Dog. Our youngest schnauzer, Cullen, is a very odd little dog. He was the runt of his litter. He's still a little bit smaller than both Papa Barkley and his brother Braxton. He's always been extremely intelligent and willful. He resists learning tricks, not because he can't, but because he won't. Whenever he sees you, he will respond in one of two ways. He will run up to you and stand bouncing on his hind feet as he rakes your legs with his claws, or he will throw himself on the floor and roll spread-eagled onto his back. Both mean the same thing. He expects to be picked up. And once you do, he will lick your face once or twice, gently bite the tip of your nose, and settle in for tummy tickles, cradled on his back in the crook of your elbow. Within minutes, sometimes less, he will fall contentedly asleep and snore loudly. I can't fault him for snoring. Maybe he got that from me. Theoretically, snorers don't know they snore. After all, they're asleep every time they do it. However, I confess, made an occasional snort so loud I have awakened myself out of a deep sleep. I know I snore, especially when I sleep on my back, and Cullen is the same way. One afternoon I lay down for a nap. The dogs all piled around. Schnauzers love to sleep on their backs. It's one of the few dog breeds with shoulders square enough to allow it. So Cullen nestled in on his back in the crook of my elbow and dozed off. Pretty soon we were both snoring away. My wife noticed, and I have this on Cece's authority, since I was definitely asleep at the time, that I would make a long, rumbling snore, and then Cullen would make a long, rumbling snore. I would be quiet for a second or two, followed by a short, abrupt snort, and Cullen would be quiet and finally snort. I would snore, closing with a whistle, and Cullen would make a little whistle. With each snore I made, Cullen would unconsciously answer in like manner. Call and response cacophony, synchronized snoring. Cullen is a copycat, dog. It seemed to me to be a nice illustration of imitation. Be like your master. The Old Testament tells us to be holy like God is holy, meaning imitate God. Jesus says that the goal of a disciple should be to become like the teacher. A disciple of Jesus should imitate Jesus. St. Paul enjoins his readers to be like God, and short of this, he says, well, imitate me like I imitate Jesus. Each one of us should be a perfect little carbon copy of our Master. Okay, humanly speaking, an imperfect little carbon copy, but at least close enough so others get the idea of what God is like. We are all called to be copy dogs. Now, wait a minute, my wife objects. Cullen doesn't know he's copying me. He's asleep. There's no choice. There's no volition. Doesn't imitating Christ, however, require will and choices? And she has a point. It doesn't just come naturally. Kind of like the difference between drifting and sailing. Currents, tides, and winds will usually not take you where you want to go, but it takes navigation and seamanship to tack to your intended destination. The world will not naturally shape us like Christ. Shape us, but certainly not produce in us the character of Jesus. Becoming reshaped into the image of Christ takes a whole series of little choices, like course corrections each day. We become intentional in our lifestyle. And yet, I catch myself standing akimbo, leg cocked one way, hip jutting another, elbow poking somewhere else, like my mother used to do. I grimace at my own bad jokes just like my big brother does. I hum my father's favorite songs, who died when I was just a small child. None of this is conscious, intentional imitation. It just kind of rubbed off on me through years of shared living. Most of our values, character, and personality development, the part that's not hardwired already in the womb, is not chosen. It's modeled by parents, and it's subconsciously noted, percolates for a while, and eventually surfaces in our behavior. All from spending lots of time together. That's likely the same way Cullen picked up my patterns of snoring. So maybe the intentional part of imitating Christ is simply to spend time with the Master. So much time that it begins to rub off on you, whether you're conscious of it or not. It percolates around in your subconscious, and when the time is right, it surfaces in the things you do, in the decisions you make, or what you say. Certainly that should be our goal, to copy the character of Jesus even when we are unaware we're doing it, and then spend enough time with a few others that they start unconsciously copying the character of Jesus they see in us. Now, I don't know if Jesus snored. If so, that much I might have down pat, and I've already passed it on to at least one willing disciple. I wish you a blessed day ahead. Goodbye.